Welcome to the Animation Addicts podcast with the Rotoscopers, Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, Don Bluth, and everything in between. My name is Chelsea Robson, and I'm so glad to have you all here. I have two fantastic hosts today. So first, we have Miss MJ Edwards, who is one of our Roto-Writers. Say hey, MJ.
Hello. Hi, thank you.
She is one of our great writers on the website. You go to rotoscopers.com, check her out. We also have some links in the description if you want to check out some of her recent articles. And our special guest today, we have Mr. Tom Bancroft. Yay!
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here, guys.
I'm so excited to have you. All right, so anybody who doesn't know who Tom is, basically he has over 25 years in the animation industry. Most of those are at Disney Feature Animation. He worked on over 10 animated films, 5 animated shorts, and he was also on numerous special projects and commercials. He's been at Big Idea Productions. He's also a celebrated author, where one of his books, Creating Characters with Personality, is one recognized as like basically the design character book for video games, comic books, and cartoonings, and required textbook at many schools. So
yes, I love that part.
I know, right?
You gotta buy it.
He's president of his online art institute website, taughtbypro.com. And that's where students are able to get instructional videos for from some of the biggest names in the animation business. And he's also the artist in residence at Lipscomb University and resides just outside of one of the greatest cities on earth, Nashville, Tennessee, where he and I met a couple years ago. Yay.
Yeah. You used to live here, and now you've moved, right?
I have. Yeah, I moved back to Arizona for some family reasons, but I love Nashville, and I go back there periodically. So
good. Get some gigs out here.
I try to do what I can.
Well, good. It's great to be here, guys. So nice to meet you finally. Well, meet you again, Chelsea, and MJ. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Really nice to meet you.
I'm all
podcast a lot.
Oh, good. Yeah, and I have a podcast. I'll mention it too. I have a podcast with my twin brother. It's called the Bancroft Brothers Animation Podcast. And not to steal any listeners away, but I'm just trying to steal listeners away from you Rotoscopers, because you have so many.
Well, here's the thing: is a lot of our listeners do overlap, because I listen to your podcast. I love your podcast. You guys always have some really great names on there, and a lot of really interesting stories, and interesting interviews, and just fun times. So definitely,
we both have different podcasts, so there's certainly no competition, because you guys you're from the fan side of things, and that makes it more interesting and fun in a different kind of way. We tend to be on the insider side of it, the more the behind the scenes kind of a podcast. And hopefully this Rogger Rabbit thing we're doing today is sort of an overlap of the two, a little fan and behind the scenes.
Exactly. That's one of the great things. Normally I do have 2 other co-hosts. I have Morgan Stradling and Mason Smith, but both of them are off for personal reasons right now. Shout out to them. They're doing good though.
Hey everybody.
Hey, I have I have been coming down with something over the last couple of days, so I may cough. I'm sorry. Not professional. It's okay.
You have a cough button? You don't have that?
Yeah, right. It's just sometimes it just comes out of nowhere though. So
yeah.
They cut out every cough when you go back.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. The audio version of this podcast will be cough-free for your listening enjoyment.
Oh, nice.
All right.
And we're on live, I guess, right? On the
we are live,
web?
yeah.
Okay.
We do have some chat going on, which is a lot of fun. If you want to we do have on the rotoscopers.com/live, we've got that chat wing open, as well as on YouTube itself. So Dylan Mentis says, props to Chelsea for holding down the fort on this episode. Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it. All right. So right now we are going to be doing one of my favorite segments, which is a segment that we get to do with any guests. Now, because we have 2 guests on here, it's going to be a little bit of a different one. But this is basically called Catch and Fire. So I'm going to be asking both of you guys just different questions, and they're kind of rapid fire. And we'll start with, ladies first, we'll go MJ and then Tom. You guys both give your answers, and we'll just kind of get to know both of you and just see, what fun answers that we can come up with. It's always one of my favorite parts. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
I hope it's easy.
I'm going to beat MJ. That's my goal.
Well, the good thing about it is it's just kind of whatever you get.
Oh, there's no wrong answers?
There is no wrong answer to this.
And I don't want to play. I want to win. We'll let everybody out there vote. I'm okay. Afterwards.
Okay, better answers.
All right. So what is the first animated movie you remember seeing, MJ?
Hunchback. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Tom.
I'm going to say Black Cauldron. And I know there was something before that, but that was the one that really sticks out. I was about in high school. I hate to say it.
Okay. Favorite cartoon growing up?
Like TV show kind of cartoon or just anything?
Anything.
I don't know. Partial to SpongeBob, I guess. But I guess I was a bit older than that, but I still watched it.
Okay.
I go back a little further, so I'm going to say Super Friends, the original.
Nice. All right. Favorite animated movie?
Oh, that's easy. Meet the Robinsons. I love that.
Meet the Robinsons. Okay.
What? Oh, I'm totally going to beat you, MJ.
No,
That was such a bad answer.
I know it's CG, but that movie means a lot to me. So.
Okay.
Just pulling that card.
Okay.
Yeah. The only way I can lose this is if I said Chicken Little. Okay, but that ain't gonna be my answer.
That is true.
No, I'm gonna say, gosh, it's hard to say all-time favorite. Animated, right? I'm gonna say The Incredibles.
Okay.
I just love that film. It kind of encompassed all my loves of comic books and geekery and animation, and it's still a great story.
Nice. Yeah. All right.
What do you think of Incredibles 2? Are you looking forward to that one?
Oh, of course. Yeah, because if Brad's in charge, Brad Bird, then I'm there for sure.
Very true.
Yeah.
All right. So who is your favorite animator or artist?
It would have to be Glen Keane, just to be cliche.
Oh man, MJ's beat me now.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say Glen Keane. Yeah.
Hey, we can all say Glen Keane.
But you know what? I'm gonna say it is Glenn, but don't tell Mark Hen. I'm gonna say Mark Hen is my answer, just because he was my mentor at Disney for many years, and he's still a killer. He's still out there killing it. One of the few traditional animators still at Disney.
Nice.
Yeah.
We won't tell Glenn.
Please don't tell Glenn. The true answer is Glenn. But yeah.
All right. Classic animation or CGI?
Classic. Yes.
Easy, classic.
There you go. All right. Disney or Pixar?
Wow, that's hard, is it? Disney. I like they have a lot of variety, and they go way back to the 30s. So Disney.
Yeah, Disney's got it. They're killing it. They're killing it now. And yeah, they had a lull there for a while, but right about time I left, curiously, they started really lulling. But they're back for good for a while now, for the last 3 or 4 pictures, and they have all that classic stuff that Pixar will never have. So
all right.
big kill.
And, Leica or Studio Ghibli?
Leica, that's easy.
Yeah, I'm more Leica too. Gosh, MJ, I'm just like copying you. Man.
Are we drawing? Is that what that means?
I'm just not as big into anime, although yeah, that out of any anime, Studio Ghibli is definitely the one.
For sure. All right. Disneyland or Disney World?
Well, I don't actually know. Can I have a secret third option, which is Euro Disney?
Sure.
Oh, that's fair.
I don't know much about those 2 parks to compare.
Since you're foreign, we'll let you have that, MJ.
Thank you.
Man, but quit changing. Let's see. I'm going to say Disney World, because it is a world, not just a land. And yeah, there's so much more there. And I worked there for many years. I was there for about 12 years and started at the Disney MGM studios back when it first opened.
Nice. All right. So are we going to go for heroes or villains?
I love heroes. I know they're goody two-shoes most of the time, but it's you gotta love the heroes.
Heroes all the time. Yep.
All right. How about this? Stitch or Tinkerbell?
I'll be girly and go for Tink.
Dang it, MJ. Yeah, I'm Tink for sure. She's, I like seeing her every time she comes on, and Stitch is great, but I'm all about character animation. I got to see dialogue and facial expressions, and Stitch isn't as big on that.
It's true. All right, how about this one? Now, this is going to be an interesting one. Favorite animated dog?
Oh, wow. Because I like stop motion, I'm going to go for Frankenweenie, actually.
Okay.
All right, I'm just gonna have to beat you again, MJ. But yeah, it's gonna be Max in the Little Mermaid. Oh
my gosh.
I was an intern when we were making Little Mermaid, and I remember seeing Russ Edmonds' animation of Max. And yeah, he doesn't talk and all that, but man, he just killed it. Just that all that great overlap of the hair and stuff. It's a small character, but he killed it.
That's a good dog.
Yeah.
All right. People or anthropomorphic?
I have trouble saying it. Anthropomorphic.
Anthropomorphic.
There you go. I like Robin Hood, and Zootopia was amazing. So yeah, I think it does make that Disney movie just a bit more special.
MJ's trying to kill me by saying little cute things. Anthropomorphic. It just sounds so beautiful. You say it wrong and it sounds good. Okay. I'm gonna go with people because I'm a person. No, I think I'm all about acting and performance, and so yeah, I'm always into the kind of the people characters, I guess.
Okay. Who would win in a fight, Frozone or Elsa?
I think Frozone. What do you say, Tom?
I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah, Frozone for sure. He's a hero, superhero. He has a little experience. Yeah.
All right. Summer releases or winter releases?
Now, someone said this before. I think that in the winter in the UK we get movies much later. So I like summer because we get them the same time as you, and I don't have to avoid spoilers all the time.
So what was your answer?
Yeah, summer releases.
Oh, okay. I got confused with that long answer. Okay.
Elaborate answer for you.
I'm gonna say summer. That's a great time to go see the movies. You have a little more free time and stuff. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so this is the most important and final question. And you both have to this is both of you at the same time. Which would you rather watch? Hunchback 2 or Cinderella 2?
That's an awesome question. Poop or poop?
Which one's shorter?
Which one's shorter, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
going to go for Hunchback 2 because Cinderella is such a classic. It might tempt it a little to watch it. I'm not sure.
Oh man, you know what? I think I'm gonna have to say Hunchback 2 only because I don't think I saw that one, and I did see part of Cinderella 2, and it burned my eyes, and because I think it was done at the Korea studio, if I remember right, and whenever the sequels went to the Korean studio, no offense to all the Korean studio people listening right now, but it was horrible. It was like the worst sequels. All the good ones went to Australia, so. Anyway,
congratulations! Sorry. You both passed Catching Fire.
Woohoo! Yay. Who won? Everybody in the chat, will you just say who won, please, right now? All right, thank you.
Oh my goodness! Thank you for joining me on that session of Catching Fire. Next, we're going to be talking about the shorts that came along with Who Framed Rogger Rabbit.
Yay!
Yay!
Chelsea, do you want to go through the shorts? I've just lost the page, so
sure. Yeah, no. So basically, Tom had the awesome opportunity to work on some of these shorts, so we are really excited to get some of the inside on those. So we have some of the different ones. Both of these, all of this information basically comes from Disney Wikia, and all of the shorts came after the movie. And so the first one is Tummy Trouble. The second one is Roller Coaster Rabbit. And the third is Trail Mix-Up. All three have quite a bit of blood and guts and flesh of flying, and poor Roger.
I know, that's what I kept saying when I was watching them. Poor Roger, right?
And there's always like a sexy Jessica scene. She's always got to pop up at one point. Yeah, I had the honor to work on two of them, Roller Coaster Rabbit and Trail Mix-Up. Tummy Trouble, and I have an affinity toward Tummy Trouble because I was an intern at the Disney studio in California when they were making Tummy Trouble. And our little room that they put us interns in, there was about, I don't know, around 20 of us, was right next to the animators that were animating Tummy Trouble. So we would always like walk over there, especially after they left at night. We'd stay late and we'd go look at their desk and like thumb through their animation and stuff. So I feel a connection to Tummy Trouble for that reason. So I kind of feel like I could speak to all three to some degree, but really officially it's four, because the short at the beginning of Roger Rabbit is a kind of unofficial first short, which is, I think it's called Something's Cooking, right? And we look to that as sort of the template for all the shorts. So it's kind of important to mention Something's Cooking because
that was the one in the actual movie, correct? It's
in the actual movie. It opens the film, yeah. And but it's the template that we used for Tummy Trouble, Roller Coaster, and Trail Mix-Up, not only in the bookends of horrible mom leaves her baby with Roger Rabbit to babysit and goes off somewhere and is super huge for some reason, and but she walks off, and then of course everything goes wrong as soon as Roger's in charge. And of course baby is horrible. Baby just gets into trouble all the time, and so it's not always really Roger's fault. It's just baby's just this baby that wanders and wants to pick up axes and things like that. And then Roger, of course, takes the fall for everything that he either just saved baby from, or he doesn't really even cause it, if I remember right. I don't think there's one gag where Roger caused the thing to happen. Baby causes it by getting into some trouble, and Roger takes the hit. And that formula is really based on the 40s shorts, a lot of the Popeye shorts with Sweet Pea and Popeye. And then there was a few in a row there that Olive Oil leaves Sweet Pea with Popeye. Same thing. She has to walk off and do something, and then Sweet Pea goes crazy and leaves the basket, or you call it a pramulator, don't you?
Yes, that is right.
A pram. Yeah. And then of course Popeye is the one that takes all the hits and stuff, and then Bluto shows up sometimes. Anyway, that is sort of the template that Something's Cooking was based on, and then we went even further, I guess you could say, with Tummy Trouble, Roller Coaster Rabbit, and Trail Mix-Up. And that's the template that was used for all three, and it's fun too, because we're obviously trying to copy the 40s style too, with the watercolor background paintings. They're all four beautiful shorts to look at. I mean, they don't. And I remember seeing the original Something's Cooking at the beginning of Roger Rabbit on the big screen, and just my mind being blown. I'd never seen full Warner Brothers animation done all on ones, like to a Disney level. And it was just like, to me, it was the most gorgeous thing I'd ever seen. And then to think later on, just a few years later, really, I would be animating and on Roller Coaster Rabbit and Trail Mix-Up was kind of a mind blower.
So did you already have the job when the movie came out, or were you like still in college?
No, I mean, I have a whole story about Who Framed Roger Rabbit that kind of leads into this, and I'll tell it. All right. But yeah, I was at Cal Arts. So this was 1988, if I remember right. I was at Cal Arts, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out in the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of Cal Arts, and went and saw it with a buddy and my brother. And we came in late, or we just didn't expect it to be packed. I don't know what it was, but we were artists, so we probably came in late. And so we had to sit in the front row. I remember being in the front row in this huge screen. It was a big theater, and we were looking straight up at the screen. Yeah, and it was not a good way to see the movie. But that's what kind of, in a way, I guess, cemented that memory in my mind of seeing Something's Cooking. So then, it starts with da 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 da, and and then the cartoon, Something Cooking, starts with the old titles. I didn't expect it, but you know, you got to go back for you young listeners and rotoscopers that that this was before we'd seen anything like that. There'd been no Roger Rabbit, of course, and we'd seen like little trailers, but Disney and Amblin, or it was Amblin, right? Was it Disney and Amblin, or before DreamWorks? They were really selective. They didn't show a lot before the movie came out. You didn't see a lot of trailers. There had just been a couple images, I think, in that early magazine. Entertainment Weekly had just come out. I mean, I think it was kind of a new magazine, if I remember right, or People magazine. There was a couple stills that had come out, and I remember everybody in the animation industry hardly knew anything about it. It was a very kind of a secret project, and a lot of that because it was being animated overseas in England with Richard Williams Studios. So we didn't know a whole lot about it. There was a small studio or a small group in California at the Disney studio that was working on it, but it was a real hush hush. And again, this was pre-internet, so you weren't seeing images and, you know, stuff even from the people working on it. So anyway, so when it started, and then there was this old 1940s looking cartoon that started, Something's Cooking. And then it ends with him shutting the freezer and or getting the refrigerator falls on his head, and then it opens and you see him now on the live action set. It was just like, wow. I mean, I do remember thinking, even at that moment, being this young animator wannabe, that I want him back in the short. Like, I love the cartoon world. I kind of was a little disappointed when that refrigerator opened and now he's in the real world. Well, I guess probably the rest of the audience loved that part, right? But I was just like, oh, but I love those backgrounds. I wish he was still in that, the real big takes and stuff. But I just remember that moment in time was huge. This was maybe for a lot of your listeners, seeing Little Mermaid for the first time on VHS was that moment for them. But seeing Who Framed Roger Rabbit in the theater, it reignited. And you got to also remember, this was the historically in time, animation was in a really bad spot. I mean, they were shutting studios. I think Filmation went under. Hanna-Barbera was doing major layoffs. A lot of the TV units were closing down. Deke Animation.
Come out yet?
No, because like I said, when I was an intern, soon after that, within 6 months of that moment, believe it or not, I was an intern at Disney, and that was beginning in 1989, and they were finishing up Little Mermaid and making Tommy Trouble simultaneous. There was 2 different units, and so it was a really exciting time to be at Disney as an intern, with both those projects going on, Aladdin development being worked on. There were some neat things that were Lion King. This film called Lion King was down the road. Anyway, but yeah, so fast forward, I did get the job. Tony and I got the internship job at Disney, and just next to us, they were making Tommy Trouble, and it was really neat because we had such an affinity toward Who Framed Roger Rabbit, having just seen it, I don't know, the year before, not even a year. I mean, I think it really was it only 6 months before that? Because 6 or 8 months.
In June of
okay. Yeah. But they were already fast at work on Tummy Trouble, like I said, when I was an intern. And so I went back to school right after seeing Roger Rabbit, right? So that was the fall of '87, and only went for a semester and got hired about Christmas time to leave school and go to Disney as an intern. So that's the timeline. And like I said, at that time, they were working on Little Mermaid. So that was like the very beginning, in January or February of 1989.
Okay. So yeah, not more than 7 months later.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the shorts were amazing. Trail Mix, I remember now Roller Coaster Rabbit, again, for the affinity, nostalgic reasons, is really special to me because it was the very first short, the very first animation at all that I worked on. I mean, my very first project. So it was the project that we opened what was then the Disney MGM Studios in Florida. Now it's called Hollywood Studios, of course. But back when that was a working studio, back in 1989, May of 1989, we opened the studio, and our first project was Roller Coaster Rabbit. And so it was neat because also the head of our Florida studio was Max Howard, and he was the head of the Roger Rabbit unit with Richard Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had roots with the original Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So there's kind of a neat history already to Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the Florida studio, with Max coming over from England to run our studio and him working on the original film.
Now, did I see correctly that both Robert Zemeckis was over both Tommy Trouble and Roller Coaster Rabbit too? I thought I saw his name.
I'm sure his name is on it. He had nothing to do with them. We never saw him. I never even really, I guess he would get screen stuff. If I remember right, I think I do remember hearing that he would have to always get screen stuff and kind of give his thumbs up, but very little involvement beyond just probably saying, yeah, that looks good. Keep going. Make me some money. Yeah. Hope this one's bigger than the last, I need a new car. Yeah. So, because none of the original group, Roller Coaster Rabbit and Trouble Mix Up and Tummy Trouble, none of the original animators, I'm going to say none, but I don't think any of them really came from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It was like a whole new group. So maybe on Tummy Trouble there were a couple that had worked on the Toontown sequence in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I don't really think so. I know Tom Cito worked on it, and Bruce Smith. Franz Fischer might have worked on the original. I can't remember, but anyway, it was very new group in all three cases. But by the time we did Trail Mix Up, which was, again, now nostalgia reasons, personal Tom Bancroft nostalgia, Trail Mix Up years later, I guess in 93 or 92 when we were working on it, somewhere in there, that was one of the first films I animated on. So, fast forward on Roller Coaster Rabbit, I was just a brand new animating assistant or assistant animator to Mark Henn. He animated a lot of Roger and Baby. He did probably half of that short. He's so fast. And I would clean up his stuff. So I was doing cleanup, assisting him. And then a while later when we did Trail Mix Up, by then I'd just become a brand new animator. So it was one of the very first, if not the first, Disney film that I animated on fully.
Nice.
Wow.
Got your
strike. Great start, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and Roger's a blast. It's so fun to animate. I hate his voice, but I love animating him. So does anybody like his voice? I mean, it's all the I just annoying.
Oh my gosh.
As a kid, I didn't mind it, and then I watched it obviously again for this, and I was a bit like, yeah.
For whatever reason, I guess your memory kind of changes things as you from years ago, because it had been years since I'd seen the movie again, and hearing his voice, I was like, was that right? Did I remember that voice right? I don't remember it being quite so high.
Yeah.
Right, I was exactly the same.
I remember enjoying it once.
Yeah. That's funny.
There's a little test short that they did before they started production on it, and it was the scratch voice was like Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of Pee Wee Herman's voice, like, oh yeah, that's similar to Roger Rabbit.
Yeah,
I can see that a little bit.
Yeah, I know Charles Fleischer thought that this was going to be his ticket. I've talked to Andreas Deja, who worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he was actually one of the few from California that kind of got lent or loaned to Richard Williams' studio. So he was in England working on more than just the Toontown sequence. Because just as a background, there were two, and that question earlier that you were playing that Steve Hickner answered kind of talks about this, which is there was a rivalry between the England studio and the California animation studio, in that at a certain point Richard Williams fell behind and they could not get Roger Rabbit done. And so because Disney was going to distribute it and stuff, they said, well, you could use some of our animators. And so they set up a little unit in California. Like I said, it must have been around the time Oliver and Company was either being worked on or just after it. So I think before Mermaid. Yeah, so before Mermaid and in that gap somewhere. And so they had a small group of California Disney guys that and gals that worked on Who Framed Rogers Rabbit, but they were just doing the Toontown sequence. So all that was done in California. Pretty much the rest of the movie was done in England. And so Andreas was one of the few that was in England doing stuff throughout the film. And so, yeah, he said that he saw Charles. So he went to some of the filming, because a lot of the filming, the live action, was done and he went to the one in England. And he went to the one at the very end where Jessica and Roger are all tied up and they're about to get sprayed by the bat, by what's his name, the bad guy,
Doom.
Doom. That's right. But that was one of the last things they shot. It was like, because they were constantly making changes to the end of the film, and so a lot of the animators got invited to go to that and see it being shot. And he said it was really funny because, again, it was a very secret project. So he said even some of the tech guys or guys that were working on the set, moving things around, he said Andreas and a few of the animators were sort of off to the side, of course, just watching. And that he overheard the two of them go, one of the guys is like, "What is going on today? What is it? Is this some kind of film?" He's like, "Yeah, it's some kind of," the other guy's like, "Some kind of film. And I guess there's going to be some Roger Rabbit character." And what they were referring to was that Charles Fleischer was on the set that day, and he dressed up like Roger Rabbit. He had a whole costume on, and just to cut, because he was so into it, and so he was running around doing the voice, and that was all dubbed in later, so he really didn't have to be there. But I think he was just, again, so into it that he was there that day in the costume, running around doing the voice. And so these guys thought that was what Roger was going to look like. And the other guy's like, "Yeah, it looks horrible. I can't imagine that's going to be a major feature film."
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I saw some videos of him, and he looks pretty ridiculous. Like, it's not even trying to be like a real rabbit costume. Like, it's just him in a big, like, overalls, and like, it's just really weird looking.
Yeah,
he's really into it though, isn't he? He's really like going for a performance, and he's not even.
Well, Andreas said that he thought Charles thought that this was like his big ticket. He was a stand-up comedian and stuff, and he was just thinking, "Oh man, I'm gonna be doing the voice for the next Mickey Mouse. This guy's gonna be around forever, and my career is set." So yeah,
3 more shorts. Hang on.
Yeah, and then it's over.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, poor guy.
Well, I mean, I felt like he did a good job. I mean, I didn't have any, I don't know. As a kid and growing up, I like you said, at some point I liked it. It's like,
I mean, it was in the line of because I don't know if you know this, but Roger Rabbit is really based on Screwy Squirrel. He's about 80% of him is Screwy Squirrel, which was a Tex Avery cartoon. And I think there was only 1 or 2 Screwy Squirrels shorts, but it was this squirrel character and a couple of these Tex Avery Warner Brothers shorts, and it was kind of a side character, but he was really crazy and obnoxious, and he had an obnoxious voice too. So I mean, this Roger's kind of from that. Roger's definitely a Tex Avery character. He's not a Disney character by any means. He's a Warner Brothers Tex Avery. You see it in his takes that he does with all the eyeballs and stuff. So that's why they wanted a kind of an obnoxious, I think, voice too.
Yeah.
He's still appealing, I think. He reminds me of Woody Woodpecker, obviously, where he has a bit of an annoying voice.
Yeah,
too, but
that's a good.
You love him. You do, yeah.
It's a good analogy, sure.
In the chat, I had a couple people. There's one Tony Bancroft. I don't know if there's any relation there or anything.
So jealous.
He wants to know, when is he going to talk about his brother, and also what is Andreas's nickname?
Yeah, so Andreas just visited Nashville. I had him come out to my school at Lipscomb University, where I teach animation, and he came out and did a nice little workshop and a lecture, and Tony did the same thing, just like that. He was like, he texted me, he's like, "Make sure when you got him on stage and stuff, you call him Andy, because he really loves it when you call him Andy." And I'm like, I wrote him back, I'm like, "Wait, really? Because I haven't heard that a lot." He's like, "Yeah, he loves it." And so anyway, I was doing sort of like one of these Instagram, Snapchat kind of things with him as Andreas was drawing, and I literally I said, "So Andy, I understand that's what you like to be called sometimes." And he turns around right mid drawing. He's like, "I hate that," So like, and he was goofing around, but he said that really the only people that called him Andy were when he first got to Disney, coming back from when he was young. Basically, a lot of the old timers and stuff like that, they would call him Andy. And so he said he didn't mind it because they were all people he looked up to and stuff. But I think that nickname has kind of dropped away, and he's kind of happy about it. I'm assuming. So not a lot of people call him that. But anyway, yeah. Hi, Tony. I'm glad you're here. I can't wait till you do this so I can heckle you.
There you go. All right. Well, is there anything other last minute things we can talk about for the shorts? One thing I thought was interesting is what it says that as their name they're made by. So Tummy Trouble and Trail Mix-Up are both stated as being made by Walt Disney Pictures and Amblin. But Roller Coaster Rabbit was made by Touchstone and Amblin. So is that just where you're
Yeah.
Was there a difference at all? I don't think there would have been.
I'm guessing, if I remember right, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when it came out, it was a Touchstone Pictures release. It was right. Touchstone and Amblin. And so, like I said, when Tummy Trouble came out, they probably still had Touchstone. But then a few years later, they got rid of that. Touchstone doesn't exist anymore. And I think they switched it over or something like that. It was some story to it. In that Touchstone Pictures was Disney's film division to do more mature things. Right. So they didn't want, because before Touchstone, it would every film, live action or whatever, like Splash with Tom Hanks and stuff way back when, that was one of their very first live action films that did really well. And if I remember right, it was released as a Disney Pictures film.
No, that one was actually the first one to be under Touchstone.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right.
I remember that because I remember watching the background and I was like, what?
Yeah, I'm wrong, but I'm completely right, because that backs up what I'm saying. Yeah, I was off, but yeah, so the reason that they wanted Touchstone was that for that reason, is that they could put it on Splash, like you were saying, and make it very clear that you're not going to be embarrassed as adults going to this Disney film, because before that it was only it was a name that was only put on animated cartoons, feature films. And so now they were breaking into live action, and soon after that was like Beverly Hills. No, it wasn't Beverly Hills Cop, but anyway, that one with Bette Midler, and that was a big hit for them and stuff like that. And so anyway, that's what Touchstone was all about. So when they came out with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, again, they wanted to make sure they released it as a Touchstone picture so that families didn't think that it was a kid's movie, because it's definitely not.
It's definitely not.
But then when they went back to start doing the shorts, there was a real sort of like, what do we do with these? Because we're taking out a lot of the adult content, so you really could just screen these for kids. They are more like traditional 1940s cartoons. And so I think the first one they just stuck with a Touchstone because they just weren't sure, and they didn't, they wanted it to feel like it was part of the Who Framed Roger Rabbit universe. But by Roller Coaster and Trail Mix-Up, I'm sure they were like, no, these are cartoons. We can do just Disney. And maybe, and I don't remember when Touchstone went away. At one point, I don't think that's still around. So anyway, that's my version of that story.
Nice. Apparently sorry, go.
I feel like they release them as when the title screen comes up, it says Arcane Maroon, like the fictitious character in the movie.
Yeah.
So when I watch them, it looks like they're still actors in these shorts, like Baby Herman. He'll walk off the set and start talking, like an old man. That's what I got the impression when I was watching them.
Well, yeah, because at the end of all the shorts, if I remember right, because I remember it on Roller Coaster and Trail Mix-Up, they break into the live action world,
That's right, yeah.
And that, so you do get that sense. They want to kind of always bring it back to that they're acting on a set, a cartoon set, and that they're really in the real world. And so they kind of always bring the gags back to that. Because I remember cleaning up on Roller Coaster Rabbit, the scene where Roger just burst through the wall and he's covered in film strips. He hit the camera and it exploded and all the film gets on Roger, but his feet are still on fire because he was doing the roller coaster thing barefoot. Yeah. And so, and Mark hand animated it, but I had to clean it up. And it was just one of these really subtle things where he's got all this film strips, and that had to be real. So that was live action. And then he kind of does this take, and he kind of jumps up and he goes, ah, you know, but he says this really subtle kind of like settle first before that, where he's just like, and then he freaks out. And I just remember how hard that was to have all these live action film strips kind of moving on top of him. And then he had to sort of settle behind it and be super subtle animation, where the cleanup lines couldn't wobble. So we had to redo it a couple times. I just remember that being a nightmare. And his feet are in the foreground on fire, and they had to be super subtle too. So anyway, it's just one of those things in cleanup that you got to nail it, you know, like the lines can't wiggle and stuff, especially once you get into the live action world. You notice it more. They look, you don't want it to look like, you want them to look animated in that real world, but you want them to be solid within that real world, you know?
Right.
And so wiggling lines and all this doesn't really look good with live action props. So yeah, the only other thing I could say about the shorts is it's really neat that because I don't know if it's one part because of the Florida studio or one part because they're shorts, and it's kind of goes along with shorts, is that you get small crews working on them, that there's a lot of like inside gags and little hidden things in the Rogger shorts. And so at one point I was going to do a book called Hidden Disney, and I pitched it to Hyperion at the time, Hyperion Books. And then of course they would not let me do it, but I have a list of all the films and feature films and shorts that has like hidden things in them.
Why wouldn't they let you do it? Who wouldn't let you? Your Hyperion or?
Hyperion wouldn't, because, and I thought, you know, well, look, and I was still employed. I was still an animator at Disney at the time when I pitched it. I actually pitched it, I think, right around the time I was animating on Trail Mix-Up, if I remember right. So it was around 93, I guess, or 92. And it was because that was so, it was still fresh for Disney, all the problems that they had with Little Mermaid and then Lion King with the gust of, you know, dust that supposedly said sex in the clouds, right. And then the Little Mermaid with the phallic symbol on the cover. And anyway, there'd been a lot of news reports just a few years before that about all these sort of hidden things that are bad for your kids, you know, which all of them don't exist or are misinterpreted. And I thought, well, I won't talk about those obviously, but I'll talk about the ones that are innocent. And that was my pitch to them. They were still like, no, we just can't address it at all. We don't even want to admit to anything, you know? So,
okay.
That's a shame. That would have been amazing, but and
then the internet showed up, and now there's websites that have done all that work for me, and it's all out there. So
Tony Bancroft says, I want that list. It's the Schindler's List of Disney trivia.
yeah. Well,
classic.
It's out there, I'm sure, on websites throughout the world. I mean, there's hidden Mickey websites. I'm sure there's what's hidden in Disney animated film websites too. So
that's awesome. Well, that was an awesome discussion about these shorts. Thank you.
Yeah.
For enlightening us. Now we're on to our main discussion as we talk about Who Framed Rogger Rabbit. Now, just so you know, although the film's title is a question, no question mark appears in that title, as that is bad luck in the industry. Is that true? We lost you there.
I've never heard that before in my life.
Well, I'm going to say it, and it's going to be true from here on out.
Yeah.
No, I've heard that a lot too. But I was trying to think of movies with question marks that failed.
There has been, like, What About Bob is one that pops in my head, and I think that did have a question mark on it. That was with Richard Dreyfuss. I don't know why I remember it.
That didn't fail, though. That was awesome.
Yeah, see, some people saw it. So
anyway. All right, so the studio was Touchstone Pictures and Amblin Entertainment. The directors was Robert Zemeckis, and producers were Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall, and Steven Spielberg. The release date was June 24th, 1988, and the budget at the time was $70 million. At the time of its release, it was the most expensive film produced in the 80s and had the longest on-screen credits of the film. I'm going to say that the 2010s are nothing or that is nothing compared to what they are doing today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it was interesting. I looked it up. I was like, okay, if that was the, you know, the biggest thing at the time, what would it be in today's money? And like with, you know, inflation calculator put it at about $143 million. But even then, I'm looking at like Tangled in 2010, which was over 200 million for a budget. So I'm like, I really don't think it's still not that big of a thing. Like, how much do you think it would have cost nowadays to make this movie?
Oh yeah, I mean it would be over 200, I'm sure. I can't imagine, because I think Zemeckis would take more money now,
Yeah.
And so would Frank Marshall, so would Kathleen Kennedy, and so would Steven Spielberg. So right there, right off the bat. The other thing that we should say is that I don't think this film would ever get made now, and it's the whole reason. We may talk about this later, but it's the whole reason we don't see Roger anymore too. There wasn't a Roger Rabbit 2. Many people have asked why that never happened, and we can get into this deeper. But it's because it was Disney and Spielberg or Amblin co-own all those characters, not necessarily the Warner Brother characters and the Disney characters that show up, but I'm talking about the original characters that were created: Jessica, Roger, Baby Herman, the Weasels. All those characters are co-owned by each company, and that was like a logistics nightmare just making the shorts. And we're lucky that we have 3 shorts that were made after that film, because eventually they wouldn't even talk to each other anymore, and it got to that point where they didn't care, because they're like, oh, who's paying for it? Do they split the money to pay for each short? Same with the feature. I don't know how they finance that, if they both put in half or how that worked, but it's just a logistics nightmare with companies that are really in competition with each other.
Right. Well, and also Amblin doesn't exist anymore. So, I mean,
well, yeah, there's that
issue. And
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure the rights are still owned by, I mean, I'm sure Steven Spielberg is just like, still, no. So it would have to be like in conglomeration with, like DreamWorks or something.
Yeah, I don't know if those rights are still with Spielberg or if somebody bought Amblin and they own the rights now. And again, that's just more of the confusion and lawyer fees that would go into making a sequel. So
it's a shame, because I would have loved more merchandise. I think Jessica Rabbit could have sold a lot. Like there was a few things at Disneyland Paris, actually. There's a few Jessica Rabbit figures and posters and things like that. But it did got me thinking, if it was just purely owned by someone like Disney, I think there'd be way more merchandise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, MJ, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wasn't talking about merchandising. I was just talking about the films and the shorts. But that's a good point, because if I remember right, that was one of the rumors I heard, was that the merchandising of the Roger Rabbit characters is what really killed any hopes of future films and stuff, because from what I remember, Disney somehow got it in their contract that they owned the rights to the merchandising, that Amblin didn't get any piece, or they got much less of merchandising. And so when that stuff, they started, and they didn't do a lot, but they started doing some merchandising, I think that Spielberg and them kind of shut a lot of that down, because they're like, either weren't getting much of it or any of it. And so they were not big on there being any merchandising because of that. So
interesting. Well, it also said that there are about 326 animators that worked full time on this film. Is that like a normal size for that's a feature film?
That's sort of we'll call that internet terminology. Okay, it's not really accurate in that. Yeah, there were probably 325 artists that worked on it full time. I could believe that number, and even that's probably pretty high. But again, there was like 1.5 studios basically working on it, if you count the England one and then the smaller California studio. But what I'm saying is inaccurate is the term animators, is that not all those people were animators. There were a lot of them were cleanup artists. A lot of them were effects artists. A lot of them were, so it just depends on who you count. So my assumption is that animators, it was probably as small as, I don't know, 20, 25 animators. But cleanup people would be a small army behind that, because it takes a lot more cleanup people to clean up all that animation, doing the keys and the in-betweens. It's a lot slower process. And then you have all the effects people, and there was a ton of effects, hand-drawn special effects that were done for Roger Rabbit. So that would be a pretty big team. And then all the cleanup people that go with that, 'cause some are, some are animators, some are cleanup people. So yeah, I'd say that's fairly accurate, the number, but again, it entails a lot more, and that could even involve production people too, productions assistants and people that are not actually drawing on the film, but are actually production people. So that would be about right, I would guess, if you count a lot of those people.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I mean, all in all, it did pretty well. It was like the fourth highest grossing film of 1988. So at about $156 million brought in, which at the time, not bad.
That makes me happy. I'm glad it did well.
I am too. I loved it. I'm glad it made money.
Yeah.
I guess that's why we saw shorts. I guess they wanted to keep it alive for a reason, for a while there anyway. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, it also did great as far as awards go. I mean, it was, let me get the official list here. So basically, it was nominated for four Oscars. Or no, nominated for 6, and it won 3 for sound editing, visual effects, and editing in general. So, yay.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you've seen the clip of when Richard Williams gets up and he accepts his Oscar for
he got
his part.
he got an honorary Academy Award, if I remember right, because there wasn't a Best Animated Film category at the time.
Really?
Yeah. So just like Waltz way back when got an honorary Academy Award for Snow White. And remember, you've seen pictures. He has the Academy Award in like 7 little ones. It's so cute.
Yeah.
So that was an honorary. Yeah, and Shirley Temple gave it to him. That was an honorary one. And they did the same with Richard Williams. If I remember right, so that he got he got some kudos for because Hollywood just died with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. They didn't see it coming. They never thought it would be as huge a hit as it was. And they certainly didn't think that anybody could really pull it off to that level, and a lot of that goes to Robert Zemeckis. Sorry. I think he deserves a lot of credit because he was just going, no, we're just going to do this. But nobody had done, this is really the very first huge special effects film, if you really think about it. Like what we see nowadays all the time with Avengers and stuff, but no computers, it's all done by hand. And so it's crazy to think that, there'd been little shorts and films and stuff that had, The Incredible Mr. Limpet, right? That's a live action with 2D animation film. Mary Poppins, has elements of it, but this was taking it so much further, where the camera, and here's the biggest reason, Zemeckis said, I don't want the camera to be locked down. In Mary Poppins, every other film that had animation and live action actors together, they would lock down the camera, meaning it literally, they'd lock it so it could not move. And what you get then is live action shots that are rock steady. With Roger Rabbit, he said, no, I want the camera to be moving all the time. And so what you end up getting is these plates that the animators then, they would, make photo plates of every frame and then peg them, and then they'd put it on their disc, like my animation disc right here. And then put a piece of paper over it and add Roger next to whoever he's supposed to be talking to, one paper at a time, one frame at a time. And then they composite it later. Well, with the moving camera, now all of a sudden you got ground planes that are changing in perspective and moving instead of locked and flat shots that you'd always seen before that in the 40s and 50s. And so because of that, you have a lot more dynamic film. You have this film that basically Robert Zemeckis just made the movie he wanted to make, animation or not. And then you have props and things like that. There's real actual props, that Roger has to interact with and things like that, or the weasels, like the guns and stuff that are on cables and stuff. So it's very complicated live action shots too, or shooting. and then on top of that, then the animators get thrown all the footage later, and they have to like try and make it look like Roger's not roller skating all the time when he's walking, or because they got to find little spots on the ground, literally a rock or something like that will help lock down where Roger's foot goes, because now I know where that rock is. Look, see, the rock's moving. Okay, so now I know that the ground plane is moving subtly, one frame at a time. I mean, it's kind of incredible that they pulled it off as well as they did.
Yeah. I mean, just going back as far as like, Star Wars did have quite a bit of, all this special effects, but even then, Industrial Light and Magic said that they only had to work on it like maybe 3 minutes of the film, and this one was like 55 minutes to be able to put everything together. So it was just like, there's nothing compared to this.
Yeah. And that's why it cost so much. That's why it took so long. That's why it did have a bigger group of artists that worked on it than your average Disney feature film at the time,
You know what's great when you're watching it? It's just so seamless. Like, my brain isn't thinking of, oh, that technical effect, that, the octopus that's got all the live action bottles and things, or the weasels holding real guns. My brain isn't going, oh, that's a live action gun, that's an animated weasel. It's seamless together. It's amazing.
I agree.
Yeah, one other thing that I really liked about this film is that it wasn't even just the visuals that really brought it home. I mean, definitely it did. It was just out of this world. Nothing had ever been done like it. But it was also, it felt so organic in the way that they pushed everything together. I love the fact that it was in the 40s because, one, I just love the 40s. I think it's such a classy era. And then also it was just those two things just kind of fit, and it made it come to life and just with that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And then doing the same research for the animated side of it, making the characters drawn in a way that look like they're from a Tex Avery 40s cartoon. I mean, they did their research, how they colored it, how they just did like, a tone for shadows rather than, especially in the animated version, there's two different Rogers, basically. The animated version where he's in the animated world, where he just has tones that are like a darker color of his skin, or his fur, or his and we had to do that in the Roller Coaster Rabbit and Trail Mix Up, but they're very simple. They kept it simple. It's like one darker tone underneath as sort of a little bit of a shadow. But then when he's in the live action world, of course, then they do full on rendered tones that the effects animators would animate. And it would look, like he has shadows and things like that on the ground and everything.
Yeah, they kept asking, like, how 3D do we make this? Which I just thought was super awesome.
Yeah, they didn't do the weird stuff where it's like in your face 3D. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't push it crazy. And that's what I think actually helps it. They kept it within the dimension of the world that the camera shot,
Yeah.
And you would be tempted to do that, I think, as an animator, to go, I'm going to have him spin around and his hand's going to come way at camera and stuff like that, and do these little tricks that really probably would have broke you out of it, because the live action people weren't doing that,
That's true. They always look like they're there. I think with Jessica Rabbit's shimmering dress as well, that particularly helped. I remember watching that interaction with the actors, Bob Hoskins in particular, I think, with the eyeline. They talked about how they need to get the eyeline just perfect. That all helps.
Yeah, they had an actual Roger, and I'll give you a little trivia here. They had an actual Roger stand-in that they would use for a lot of the shots, and they would rehearse the shot first before they, I think, even started filming. And they would have the Roger there. So it was like a big kind of like puppet, life size, for what he would be in that world. And they would have that there so that Eddie Valiant, what's his name? The actor, I can't remember now.
Bob Hoskins.
Bob Hoskins. Thank you. So that he would know, okay, this is where I need to look. And he could act out the scene and get the pacing, and everybody in the environment could know where Roger's supposed to be. And then he's going to go over here on the bar and he'll end up here, so you always know kind of where to look and how big he's supposed to be. They needed to be able to visualize that. Then they would take it out and reshoot, actually, having action and having the film going. and it would give them a better understanding. And Bob Hoskins was really good at it. I mean, like he could really make it feel like he's looking here, 5 feet in front of him, not way back over there, like he could actually kind of, and that it's a subtle thing, but how you train your gaze to look at something that's not there, but feels like it's there only 3 feet from your face, rather than looking in the same spot, but it's 15 feet away, is different. I mean, your gaze is slightly different and he really nailed it really well.
Yeah, he did.
Because I was thinking of all things to think about. The live action Scooby-Doo with the CG Scooby, and the actors are looking right past, like through Scooby.
Yeah.
So yeah, with Roger, everyone's looking at Roger like he's there. It's really good.
They put some work in it, and again, I think that's a kudos to Robert Zemeckis. I think he was really thinking about these things on the in the live action shoot, and a lot of that's a director that, I mean, he grew up watching cartoons. He really wanted this to. His mandate, I think, to himself was, I really want to make it feel as much as possible like these animated characters are living in this world, and so he thought about every little nuance. And so did Spielberg.
Well, it looks like we don't want to run out of time to go over like our different favorite spots in this movie. So I want to go out as far as like in the first 20 minutes of the film. What are some of our favorite things that kind of jump out at us? For me, I loved the part when, I mean, we already talked about the opening short, and then when it kind of goes over into the real world. I love how when Eddie comes in and like he goes up into the office of Maroon Studios, and he's just like, I just love the interaction between him and the owner of Maroon Studios, because I just feel like that's so real in a way. I was like, that's so cool. And then he like opens up the window. This is the thing that I always remember. He opens up the window and you got Dumbo, and he's just like, they work for peanuts.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and they make that kind of subtle, reference that he's on loan,
right,
from another studio, and I thought that was kind of a neat thing. It's all those little things that it just really brings you into that world. They had all those little references, and of course, seeing all these characters. Just then you go to a sidewalk scene and you see other animated characters. You're like, oh, that's Coco the Clown, and these old characters from the 40s and stuff that, and Betty Boop, of course, shows up later on in the bar. And that it just cements this world of like, wow, what would it be like if recognizable toon characters really were in this, live action world?
Right.
I mean, kind of were stars, but kind of not.
Yeah.
Second rate.
In my mind as a kid, I remember, obviously you've got Mickey and Bugs in the same shot as well at one point, and that just like blew my head completely. And I thought, oh, okay, so that makes sense. They're actors and they live in Toontown just like we do as people. So I believed it all. I really did.
Yeah, I thought it was neat. Even the props are like, they treat them like animals almost. You know, like what was it? The box that breaks and all the little, I can't remember if they're little shoes that are running around.
The shoe that goes in the dip, that was horrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, and then what was funny is, okay, so Bob Hoskins, he says that for 2 weeks after seeing the movie, his young son wouldn't talk to him. And when he finally asked why, he said his son couldn't believe that his father would work with these cartoon characters like Bugs Bunny and not let him meet them. I was like, that is awesome.
I just think it's incredible that he waited 2 weeks to ask his son why he wasn't talking to him.
Why are you talking to me?
Like, worst dad ever.
That's so funny.
That's the late Bob Hoskins, by the way.
Oh, I know. That made me so sad.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember him from this movie and then also from Hook. I thought he was the best Smee ever.
Yeah. Yeah, he was good. Yeah,
I thought he was American. I thought his accent.
No, he's.
Well, you tell me if his accent was good in Roger Rabbit.
He's a bloke. Yeah. Just like you.
I wouldn't call her a bloke, but
I don't know what that means really. Thought it was a term of endearment. Not endearing, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll be a bloke. That's fine.
Yeah.
How about the Ink and Paint Club?
Oh yeah.
That was awesome.
The
favorite parts in there?
I do remember. I just saw Andreas Deja, and he was talking about Roger Rabbit, and he said that he did that gorilla that answers the door.
Oh
Oh
wow.
yeah.
So that was his. And I remember never really liking that scene where the gorilla throws Bob Hoskins out, because it looks like he's on some kind of a rope, or
Right.
kind of has this weird swing to it, and then he throws him, and yeah, so that scene never really. And when he throws him, he looks like he's like slowly flying. Throws on cables never work. They're always just too slow because they don't want to hurt the actor.
Well, yeah, and it's also on a different
arc.
On a different arc. I would expect him not to be going like this, but I don't know, have a little bit more of a. Yeah. It just doesn't quite get there, but it's still good.
Yeah. But I mean, it that's the bar sequence is great, and Betty Boop showing up, and then of course the dueling
pianos.
Yeah, and I think that was I heard that was Spataford, not Spataford. Now I can't remember the animator's name that animated most of that did both characters, I think. But it was weird to me seeing Daffy with the long kind of hair. Like they went all the way back to the original Daffy, like the very first version of him. Like he looks really, he looks really weird. And I kind of thought, maybe they should have cheated that and gone with the Daffy that we kind of knew later on. But it was like the very first Daffy, and so he looks a little different in the Roger Rabbit. So yeah, that was great. It was a good sequence.
Is that the same thing? I remember reading Mickey and Bugs had to have the same screen time in the same shots together. I imagine then.
Yeah.
Daffy and
Daffy and Donald.
Donald, that's it. Yeah, because they're really having a go at each other, like throwing one inside the piano. I wondered if there was arguments about that as well. Well, you can't beat up our Donald, you can't beat up our Daffy like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, they did it pretty good in the shorts. Donald would always get beat up, and Daffy would get beat up. So maybe that was kind of part of goes with the character a little bit. But yeah, I mean, again, when I was a kid, just out of high school, seeing Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when they did the dueling pianos with Daffy and Donald, because that was really, if I remember right, that was the first time you really saw the Warner Brothers and Disney characters really interacting, was that dueling pianos part. And I just remember like a big smile on my face, and I didn't want it to end. I just thought it was the neatest thing I'd ever seen. I was a geek.
Me too. Have we lost Chelsea?
Oh, I think we have. We just need to keep talking.
We do. Well, as a kid, I remember, like you said, the best thing was seeing the characters you know and love. I saw Snow White at the end, and I kind of geeked out a little. And there's the little, obviously we've got Acme products in there. Do you remember the end of the film? And you've got the glue, and made by Acme Productions. And I thought, well, those products didn't work that well for Wile E. Coyote, so I'm kind of surprised they're working that well at the end of the film.
Yeah.
My favourite one has to be the Frank Sinatra sword, actually.
Yeah, that one's, and that's the kind of thing that you'd have to watch like 40s cartoons to really get and understand, because there were, Frank Sinatra would end up being an animated character a lot in the Warner Brother cartoons, because he was such an idol. He was I don't know, Justin Bieber. That's probably not a good example, but he was at the time, he was the hot, sex idol, sexy guy that all the teen girls liked. And so, he would show up as an animated character a lot. So then doing that throwback of him being a crooner and stuff as a sword, that is, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things that I got it because I grew up on the reruns of the Bugs Bunny shorts and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing that makes this film, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it's a whole lot more Warner Brothers than it is Disney. It's like, it feels like it's 80%, Warner Brothers and only about 20% Disney. Which again, I didn't expect. I kind of thought there'd be a lot of Disney references, and it was a nice kind of thing, I thought. But there's some really great character development there. And of course, then we meet Jessica Rabbit. And I just remember thinking when I saw Jessica Rabbit for the first time, I was like, I have never seen, I couldn't believe that they were doing it. I really couldn't. I mean, like, Oh my gosh! Like that was the first time in the film I really felt for sure. Oh, this is an adult film. This is not for kids.
Yeah, I
so when
thought the
she shows
same.
up,
Yeah, right. She I have to admit though, she is quite a knockout. So it's
yeah, it works.
Yeah, it does. Richard Williams said, "Don't do in animation what you can do on camera." So the exaggeration of her curves is only something that you can achieve in animation.
Yeah, yeah,
it does work. Although she'd completely fall over if she was real.
yeah, I would imagine. Although there's been a lot of cosplayers that have tried it ever since then, and some of them pull it off quite nicely. She's helped others make money, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't remember at what point. You know, I always thought it was creepy too. That old guy that's like, she grabs his tie and he's all like ogling her and stuff. He's this creepy old guy. Hey, are you back?
I am back. I'm so sorry.
We were just talking about the characters that we love to spot. Did you have a favorite character when you're watching the movie in the background? You're like, oh, that's, you know, so.
Oh, favorite characters in the background. Yeah, there's just so many. Like the octopus he was really cool in the ink and paint club. I thought he was really awesome. And then also the penguins when they had all the penguins in there from
Mary Poppins.
I thought those were fun. Mary Poppins obviously wasn't released because that's set in the 40s and Mary Poppins released. So it's like, oh, the penguins are just working till they get a job later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were in the bar, right? They were waiters.
Yeah. My favorite line, I think, the Scotch on the rocks. I mean ice.
It took me a while to like. I mean, I first saw this. I was young, and I was like, I have no idea what that means.
No
idea. I was like, what? Oh, well, have we talked about when Roger he is coming up and he finally meets up with Eddie?
No. So are you talking about in the office or?
Yeah. So like he comes over and he's like, I need your help. He tries to get his help from there. And then he ends up going over into he like plays his song for all of the guys in the bar.
Oh, right. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just getting into that.
Yeah. Okay. So one of my favorite parts is right there, and where you have Doom going around and he's tapping on the door and he's like, shave and a haircut.
Yeah.
The one thing that a tune can't resist is this 2 bits.
I know. I thought that was I didn't get it at the time, I guess, when I first saw it, you know. I mean, I've heard that song, I guess, but like kids today for sure would not get that.
Oh,
My kids would not get that reference at all. And yeah, I guess the idea just being it's one of those irresistible old songs that you can't, you know, you got to throw in that line.
That's really funny.
But it was a clever way to do that.
Yeah. If someone is knocking that, you do want to like knock back.
Yeah.
Doesn't just get tunes.
Yeah. And I love that he's like freaking out in the other room. You know, you get to see Roger and he's sweating and shaking. I love, you know what, we didn't talk about it, but I love that there's, you know, it's really smart. And I wonder if this was Spielberg or Zemeckis, I guess, but in the original script version, that they really set up Bob Hoskins or Eddie as having this backstory. Like that makes it feel like a real noir kind of a film too, but it really lends itself to having a lot more depth to his character, but to the film in general. It's really it has a really good story when you think about sort of that they imply all this backstory with him and the girl, I can't remember her name, at the bar that they obviously used to date, and then he had a brother that got killed, and he used to love tunes, you know, and now he hates them.
Right.
All that backstory, now he's like an alcoholic and stuff, basically. And he's this washed up guy that because of that one thing, and then it was Doom probably, right? That ended up killing. Ultimately, that killed his brother. So he's getting revenge. I mean, all that just makes for a great, you know, story with a lot of depth.
Yeah. And there's even one point where it has a picture of him and his brother with his dad, who was part of the circus. And so they both like have their clown noses on. Like they have such depth in that, like how far he's come from being like totally in it to totally just hates it all.
Yeah. And his girlfriend mentions that he used to be a lot of fun, you know, you know, that he was a funny guy at one point, you know, and then you kind of see that at the end, right? They bring it back at the end where he does a little stand-up comic thing to try and kill off the weasels. You know, you get to see the humorous side that he used to have.
That's right, the juggling, and you get the impression that's like that was the guy who might have been before. I love how his character does come full circle because he does ultimately save Toontown at the end. So yeah.
There's a whole there's layers.
Yeah.
Did we lose her again? We did. Oh well. Well, Chelsea, we're just getting so Chelsea. What was it like when you were singing with Madonna as a backup singer? Tell us about that. Really? Oh. Okay. Yeah, her mic is dropped out, but what she said was, yeah, she had to wear some really skimpy outfits, and actually she went even skimpier than Madonna, which is crazy. That's crazy. Chelsea. Oh my gosh. All right, well, let's go back to Roger. Yeah. Chelsea, hey, let's go back to Roger Rabbit. Okay, me and MJ want to talk a little bit, please.
Stop talking about Madonna.
Yeah.
I've completely lost where
yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about. Let's see. We back at the office, crime scene. Roger comes for help. So we talked about. Oh yeah, she's got a note here that Charles Fleischer got a rabbit costume while doing his voices off camera. You know what? I got to say this. I cannot imagine that all the actors, the real actors on the set, and the production people working the boom things and all that. And Charles Fleischer wasn't like the big joke of the set. Like, oh, he's got the costume on.
Yeah.
He's doing all the lines off screen when he really didn't need to, probably, and all that. So, I don't know. No. Sorry, Charles.
I found out he did the voice of the cab as well, which surprised me because the voice for the taxi cab's quite good. Pretty different to Roger's voice.
Yeah, it is pretty. It is very different. I mean, he's a very talented guy. I'm being mean.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Just what we were saying. Roger has appeal anyway, so that's his character, isn't it? That's the voice he's meant to have.
Yeah, I just think it's neat too that we were talking about the depth of the film, but even on the Toontown side, you know, that a guy like Roger gets a girl like Jessica, like you don't see it coming, you know.
Yeah. I think that's the cool thing about Jessica is she wasn't just, well, she was obviously stunning, but she had a role and she loved Roger and she loved him. I love this line because he makes her laugh. I know that's true.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's what the girls say. None of us guys believe it, but yeah, girls say it all the time. It's like their number one thing that they like about a guy. And all the guys they say it to are like, I'm funny. Why don't you like me? Anyway.
It's like the message of the film as well. Doesn't Roger say something about sometimes laughter is the only weapon we have? And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And it validates Toontown, you know, because all through the movie, they're making this kind of ghetto, this second class world, you know, that no respectable human would really go in there. And they kind of validate it at the end and say, well, no, this is why, you know, why we need tunes, you know, because they set it up at the beginning. They work for peanuts, right? That these are second-rate actors and stuff in Hollywood. They're not, and I love that too, because even as we were making Roger and then me later, the shorts, you know, animators have always felt like second-rate, you know, in the world of Hollywood, you know, because there's so many of us that have to make a movie and all that. And before Lion King, you guys don't know that world, but before Lion King, you know, all of us animators felt like second rate. Like, why aren't people, you know, going to our movies in big numbers and blah, blah, you know, we'd work so hard on these films and they'd kind of come out and go away, you know, and it'd have a limited shelf life, and kids liked them, but adults would look down on them, you know, and they still do to some degree. But so there's a lot of commentary there, sort of throughout the film. There's a lot of really subtle commentary going on that I think is really interesting, that you don't pick up the first time you see the movie. You kind of pick it up more the second and third time, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. So I imagine, obviously, the older you get in animation, not everyone was always credited, were they? I imagine now, obviously, everyone has to be like yourself. That's interesting. From your point of view, obviously, that's something that you can pick up on watching the film that I wouldn't have thought of. But I think that's because in the Rotoscopers and the fandom, we're all such big animation fans that we seek out this information. But I know exactly what you mean about, I don't know, the average Joe or adults taking their kids to animation don't appreciate the all the people behind it.
Like, believe me, I just saw Moana by myself, right? My kids were all busy. They didn't want to go. I have cheerleader daughters, so they're not in animation at all. And so a couple of them would have come, but they had cheer practice and stuff. Anyway, I'm here. I am at my age. Like, I look like this creepy old man watching Moana by myself with a bunch of families and kids, right? And you know, so that mystique is definitely still around, you know. It still lives.
You shouldn't feel like that. I thought myself, when I'm older, I'm still going to be seeing these Disney movies for as long as I live. So why look weird sitting, you know, just to myself watching the latest Disney princess movie or whatever.
Yeah, and clapping.
Yes.
Yeah.